Good evening, everyone. Good evening. So I'm very thankful to all of you who are here, who made it to our meeting this evening of the York NAACP. Please also be reminded that our meetings are every fourth Tuesday at 6:30 at Crispus Attucks here at 605 South Duke Street. So hopefully we'll also see you in May. We, as you see, are videotaping. The plan for today, because these candidates were so gracious to respond to our last-minute requests, the plan for today is that they each would give about a 5-minute presentation. And I did ask them to consider the issues that are important to us as an organization. So if you have a pressing question, because we weren't really going to go back question and answer, but if you do have a pressing question at the end of, say for instance, the 10th Congressional District candidates, then raise your hand so we'll know. But otherwise, what we were thinking is this was a meet and greet. There's some snacks over to my right. Please help yourself too. But after they give their stump speeches, that you can have some personal interaction with these candidates. Because sometimes what they say at the podium doesn't always show who they are as a person. And one of the things that I absolutely know is you're putting people in those positions and you need to know who they are. And know whether or not they have your interests at heart, whether or not they will be serving you or some other interests. So we want you to vote. And we want you to be informed voters, because we understand that the more you know, the more willing you are to go out to vote and speak to others about voting.
Good evening. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out this evening. The weather is starting to deteriorate outside, but it's just misting lightly. Don't worry. We'll be okay. We're not going to wash away, but it's not snow. So I'm very thankful, yes. All the applause are fine. I have decided that this is going to be my spring of absolute craziness, and the weather is emphasizing it in spades. I am a 25-year resident of York County. I am a lifelong Democrat. There has been a rumor that was floated around that I was a pretend Democrat, which I'm not quite sure what that means. But I can remember as a child sitting there listening to the discussion of my parents on whether or not they could vote for a Catholic, because Catholics owed their allegiance to the Pope. And that would put it about 1962 with John Kennedy. So my family has been Democrats for as long as I can remember. I have spent most of my life doing community service and supporting my community wherever I lived. As a child, my father had bad health. He was born in 1899, so he was kind of old when I was born. No, I'm not that old, but he was. And so I went out door to door for the American Heart Association. I went out door to door for the American Cancer Society, and I learned very quickly how to talk to people, how to listen, how to hear their stories, because they were just as important as mine. And to try to be involved and support those people and to hear those conversations and to then live by those things that I heard. As I got older, I went into the military. I spent 13 and a half years in the military. And I spent it in training and in journalism. And in journalism, one of the things you have to know is what question to ask and then to listen, to hear their stories, because that's what everybody wants to share. That's how you learn. I then came to York, Pennsylvania, fell in love with the area, just thought it was gorgeous, loved the buildings. I just thought it was the most fantastic place to raise kids. And I had 3 boys at that time. So I then ended up going to Eastern York School District. They had an open house and I was asking questions and they looked at me and they said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Well, I moved up here and my kids are in school." And they said, "You want to be on a school board?" And I went, "What does that mean?" Because I didn't know Pennsylvania, didn't know how it was organized. That was the beginning of the most wonderful experience I ever had. And I spent 17 and a half years on that school board, 10 years with the Lincoln Intermediate Unit, working on that board. And I can tell you as an educational advocate, I have seen the disparity that exists based on zip code, on what kids get or don't get, of what supports are in place or not in place. And we're very fortunate actually in Pennsylvania to have the support systems that we do. And that's a real shame because you got to wonder how bad the rest of the United States is. I currently am running for the 28th Senate District because I saw that the trash man was not going to be running for the Senate and his hand-picked minion had no competition. And I was furious. I was like, how dare she think she's just going to walk in and take it? Because I know there's not a lot of Democrats, but darn it, I am. And I can do this, and I can listen to people, and I can build bridges because that's what I've done. In the military, I built bridges so that I could get people to get the mission done. In the school districts, I built bridges because that's how you get people to work together to do things on a very limited income to try to make the school systems better. I was usually the only female, and I was usually the only Democrat on the entire boards. But you know, we got a lot done, and Eastern became one of the strongest schools in York County because we started saying, let's go back to basics. Let's talk about literacy. When kids can read, then it becomes a whole lot easier to do science, to do math, to do anything because they can read, and then they learn how to think. And one of the best things to help literacy is music. And when you have music in the curriculum as an add-on these days, because they don't have time or they don't have money, students lose. So I applaud what you've been doing with the Music Association because we've got to have those kinds of opportunities for students. It helps their learning. And isn't that what it's all about? Because if our students are prepared for their lives, then we start having business and industry who's interested in coming here. Then we have better jobs. We have better income. We have opportunities that are going to be available because we focused on the primary pieces of education first and said, you know, it's important. The final thing that I want to talk about is the fact that we need women in the legislature. We are currently 38th in the nation for representation from women in the legislature. I want to keep Carol company. I'll be at a different address, but we're going to be in the same area. She's going to have to give me dressing lessons, though, because she's way classier than I am. When I did my research for my dissertation, which is on women's pathways to the legislature of Pennsylvania and Maryland, I wanted to do this for our community. I wanted to do this for the Commonwealth. And at that point, we were 43rd, so we have improved. But you know something? If you don't have at least some representation at the table for all the voices and all the community, then you're losing. You're losing intelligence, you're losing perspective, you're losing all of those pieces that have to be there to be successful. I am not impressed with what the men have done. I'm sorry, guys. But the ones that we've put in office right now have just been kind of sitting there going, the crickets are louder. We need some work, we need to start it now, and we need to take the Commonwealth further, and I would like to help Governor Wolf with his agenda. I would like to be one of those people that steps up and says, let's look at the criminal justice system, let's look at education, let's look at funding, and see what we can do to make this Commonwealth stronger, better, and more attractive to everybody. Thank you.